Now, one thing I've heard, and I'm not really too sure on, is it? Do you know anything about what the Scientology's been doing here in Australia in the last few years, or is that outside of your world? Yeah, because I've sort
No,
of
I'm
yeah, you're right.
I was just going to say I'm a little familiar with Scientology in Australia. I've done some study on it. I've interviewed Steve Kinane from Australia as a reporter who works down there. He was working quite a bit on exposing Scientology for a number of years. Worked with Senator Xenophon on it.
Yes, that's right.
Of course, my son lives in Australia.
You were talking about, yeah, in Perth.
What's that?
I was just trying
Yes,
to
that's
remember the
right.
reporter, and yeah, it took me a second to remember who it was.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, he's a great guy, super nice guy, and he got to covering Scientology, and then he just couldn't let it go. It was just like ended up writing a book about Scientology's experience in Australia. There's a whole book about it, and
Nice.
it's a really good book, by the way.
Because the reason I bring it up is that a few years back, maybe only 2 years back, I don't know, it might have been a few more than that now, but I was, I don't know what I was going to do, to be honest, but I was going to go in and check out the local Scientology place. Not obviously actually interested. I was more along the lines of what are they actually going to try and tell me? You know, like I sort of knew what I was going into, not expecting much. But literally, I thought, okay, I found their little the website where it says this is where they're located and they have a number. So all right, I give them a phone call. I gave them a phone call and somebody picked up. I'm like, sweet. So I had this little quick chat. Just basically, you know, I was wondering if I could just walk in, like one of those things that, you know, do you have a specific date for something? And so he gave me the schedule. I'm like, cool. I'll probably be in a week or so. By a couple of weeks later, that place had been sold. It was unbelievable.
Oh wow!
It shut down, and I looked online, and the only article I could find is that they've sold a bunch of places around Australia, and the main group has now moved to Sydney, like a big base near Sydney, and there isn't so many scattered bases around the place. And I was wondering, is that true? Like, because I mean, it could just be
Not that
one,
I heard.
you know?
No. I think it was just that one, and it sounds to me like they either moved, or it was what was called a Scientology mission, which is not the same thing as a city-level organization. We call them orgs for short. Nobody calls them churches. We call them orgs. That's the internal language of Scientology, which again speaks to its religiosity. But missions, which are lower-level organizations,
Just quickly,
they open and close all the time.
On the church thing, quickly, it's the exact same with dubs. Because we don't call them churches, they're kingdom halls, you know, and you don't go to church, you go to meetings, you know. Anyone that says church to us, you're like, what are you talking? You're obviously not a JW.
Right.
So I know
well, the language is important in these groups.
Yes. No, it really is.
It's part of the control.
Yeah. And
but as far as that, let me just say, as far as that group you were talking about goes, missions of Scientology are basically an individual Scientologist who pays the church about $30,000, $40,000 to get the right to deliver Scientology services in his area, and he has to open up an office building or a space where he can deliver, and he hires some people, and they get going, and those things open and close constantly. So that could have been the group you were.
Fair call, but I'm just so some poor bugger paid, you know, whatever 30-40 grand to Scientology. Did he then also Scientology obviously doesn't pay the rent for the place? I'm guessing he then had to pay for the rent for the office space.
He was responsible for all of it,
Bloody
all on
hell.
his shoulders. He's kind of like a missionaire, kind of, you know. He goes out and it's on him, man, and he makes it or breaks it, and that's what happens. The city level churches, like the one in Perth or Brisbane, or one over in New Zealand, or the one in Rome, or the one in Topeka, Kansas, those city level churches do get invested in by senior church levels if they need to in order to keep them open. The policy of the church is that once a church is opened, a city level church like that, they never ever are allowed to close.
True.
So so they'll do anything to keep those things open. When we start seeing city level churches closing, that's when we know it's really going in the tank. And that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I've just quickly looked up the Church of Scientology of Brisbane, and it's a different, looks to be a different place than the one I remember looking up ages ago. But it's still, excuse me, it's still just a small, like an office space, I suppose, in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I would have expected.
But that is a city level church. Brisbane is a city level church. That's not a mission. So they moved on you, but they didn't close.
Mother truckers. Wait, why am I censoring myself on my own channel? Motherfuckers. Oh, goodness. Oh, well. No, it's a bit random, I know. It was just something I remembered about it, and I was wondering if that was a thing, I suppose.
Well, when people get curious about it, I tell them, look, if you want to know about it, go check it out. You don't have to take my word for it. Go down there, get creeped out. You'll see what I'm talking about. On the other hand, take some classes. I don't care. I mean, it's not like, if you want to do it, well, great, do it. All I'm trying to provide is education and experience from 27 years of being involved in it. And getting to its highest levels and knowing I've been way behind the curtain. I mean, I didn't just see the wizard. I in some respects I was the wizard in some ways. So I already know the game, and I try to warn people off of it. But at the same time, go check it out. Have fun.
At least you're giving people that warning that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise before going in, and they'll get duped. Whereas at least if they want to go in being educated in what they're going into, that's their call. That's fine. That's personal choice. But if you're going in not knowing what you're getting into, then it's like taking away your consent, basically. That's what Scientology's going to do. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, what's going to happen if you walk into one of these places? And this is not just Scientology. Again, I'm espousing principles here that are fairly universal for destructive cults. Whether they're religious or not. I mean, there are sports clubs. I mean, there's martial arts dojos that act like destructive cults. There's political groups that act like these groups. So the mechanisms are all the same, though. And one of those mechanisms is when you first come in and get on board, they're purposefully and knowingly deceiving you to some degree. They're not telling you everything that's going on. You're not involved in a situation where they're giving you informed consent. And there's going to be a lot of gotchas that are going to start coming. And it's the smart person who keeps their head above the clouds enough to, or out of the clouds, I should say, enough to recognize those gotchas when they happen, and be aware of that kind of thing. Because you can be lulled into a false sense of security by a lot of techniques that are used by these groups, like love bombing, we call it, where they're just super nice to you. They're super nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, these people aren't mean. They're not nasty. These are wonderful people. These people aren't abusing me. I'm not being beaten up here.
No,
well,
exactly.
Yeah, of course you're not. You're on day one, man. Come on. What do you expect? I mean, that stuff doesn't happen on day one. It doesn't happen on day 50. That stuff doesn't happen until you're fully into the group,
When you've committed yourself.
Yeah, so keep your wits about you, no matter what.
It's it's a tough thing to sort of juggle if you are going to go into it knowing what you're going into.
Yeah, frankly, they're losing members like a sieve right now. I mean, nobody's really going in there and stuff. I say, if you want to do so. But arm yourself, only because I'm not your guru. So I'm not going to tell people what to do with their lives. That's not my role in life. So that's why I say that.
a lot of us, at least, that's sort of a reasoning behind getting out of the groups we did, because we didn't want to be in those positions. But anywho, I thought I'd ask the chat, the side chat, if there are any questions for Chris, Nadine. Have you had any coming in yet?
Oh, yes, lots of questions.
Oh, we have questions.
We have lots of questions. Yay! Okay.
I got plied with so many questions that's why I started my Q&A show that I do every week.
Yeah,
and I've done
that's a great show.
Wow.
I've done 175 of these episodes, answering 8 to 10 questions each episode. So it's amazing to me how many questions there are on these topics, and I love it. I think it's great.
It is wonderful. So, Beach Price asks, wouldn't Scientologists just view all other religions as part of that programming?
Well said.
Yes, they would. Yes, they would. Only high-level Scientologists would think that. The Xenu thing is only about 5% of Scientologists make it to that level. So generally speaking, no, most Scientologists aren't going to think about the Xenu programming, or implants is what it's called in Scientology. But they're still going to think that other religions are authoritarian control systems that are mainly coming, depending on how aware they are as a Scientologist, like how involved they are as a Scientologist, I should say. They might think of religions as past life implants or control measures, and if they don't, if they haven't gotten into the whole past lives thing yet, then they'll just think religions are just, bad for you in general, and Scientology is the good one. And that's kind of how they think of it.
Cool. Next question is from a pasta babe, Linda James. Chris, what are some of the social norm mistakes that you've made when you first left, and the consequences, good and bad?
Social norm. Oversharing was a real problem for me for a long time, because in Scientology you're not allowed any secrets ever about anything. So I was in the habit of telling everybody everything about my life, and I had to learn to put some filters in place. That kind of I had to learn about the concept of boundaries. That was a huge revelation. Like, what? These things exist. What are you talking about, boundaries? It took me the longest time to get my wits around that idea. So that created some awkward conversations from time to time.
I'll bet.
I wasn't brutally honest or something. It's not like I was over evaluating or insulting other people. I was just talking too much about
oversharing. Yeah.
My crap. So that was kind of the problem. And then the other thing, which I've actually been battling for quite a while, is dealing with disagreements. Dealing with the idea that just because I have an idea about something, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way to think about a thing, or that somebody and I can coexist with a disagreement and it's kind of okay. Especially on social media, there's a number of reasons for that. But I think in thinking about it a lot and looking at it in my own personality, it has to do with the fact that I came from years of feeling like I had all the answers in Scientology, because Scientology is the science of certainty. That's what Hubbard called it. So you're absolutely certain that you know all this stuff and there's no other answer to it. And that's a hard habit to break. And I've caught myself at it over and over and over again. And it's something I work on a lot, because I think it's important as a critical thinker to, you got to be open to other ideas and to other ways of looking at things. And you got to be okay with the fact that some questions might not have a one right answer kind of situation. And it's okay for other people to think other things, and you can still coexist, I
can sympathize with that, because it's the same kind of thing with the dubs. Obviously, it's the truth, and all the answers, and so coming out of that, it's you always really have to do a double take on yourself and your own opinions, like step it down a level. When other people have other opinions, they're just as valid as your own. Like got to catch myself.
Exactly. I won't. Yeah, because I won't give on facts. I mean, if I've got an objective fact in front of me, look, man, that's the fact, right? But opinions, I mean, come on, let's chill out.
Yeah.
That's where it's been. Yeah.
Okay, so Mediocrity's Maze says, without I'm sure this is more of a rhetorical question, but it's funny, so I'm asking it anyway. Mediocrity's Maze says, without Scientology, who will pay for Tom Cruise's platform shoes?
Right.
Sorry, okay, on to the next question. Southern Boz Lady says, Chris, if you will be on any of Leah Remini's episodes. I told her that you were, but I couldn't remember which ones they were.
Sure. Yeah.
So if you can expound on that.
Yeah, no problem. I was on season 1, episode 5 was the number, but it wasn't. Season 1 had a bonus episode that was a Q&A episode. It was a Reddit AMA. And when they did that first Reddit AMA episode, they called me out to LA, and I got to be part of that. I got to talk to Leah and Mike and answer some questions and stuff. So that was the one I was on. So it was the first Reddit AMA episode of season 1. And and then I got to serve as a consultant on season 1 and season 2 behind the scenes also, which was fun.
Cool. And the next question is, Josiah Hansen asks, Chris, what is your favorite Ninja Turtle? He asked this of everybody, so I had to ask him.
I will say Donatello.
Completely
random.
Okay, I'll let him know. He'll be disappointed. He says Michelangelo is the correct answer.
I almost said Michelangelo, but then he called him Donatello.
So, okay, next question is Fenrir the God Eater says, Chris, what do you think is the wacky? Yeah. What do you think is the wackiest concept of Jehovah Witnesses?
I think our JWs are the ones who believe that you're going to die and just basically be in your grave until Judgment Day, right? Until everybody comes out of the graves and lives again.
Pretty much.
Is that?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was a little weird. I think in terms of wackiness, I thought that belief was a little weird. In terms of their actual practices, I think the 2-witness rule thing is for the birds when it comes to actual justice for people, and that's the one that actually disturbs me the most.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that one.
Cool. Yeah, it's same here. So, next question, Mark Caesar says, Chris, how long do you think religions have before they die now that we have the internet and can access the lies of religion as easy as we can?
Yeah, tough question. Because what you're fighting there are some very primal instincts that we have. Religion didn't just come along because some evil guy one day twirled his little mustache and said, I think I've got a good idea of how to control other people. There are urges and primal instincts we have to get questions answered that we don't have the answers to. So without those answers, people are going to look and dream up answers, and that's a lot of where religious ideas come from. And so what we really need is a lot more than just information dissemination through the internet, which is really helping a lot. But we also need very solid answers to the questions people have about things that they really don't know right now, and which science is not even approaching, which is supernatural experience, what happens after you die, where did we come from? I mean, science is zooming as fast as it can to get these answers, but it doesn't have them yet. So I think we're going to need those before we're going to really be able to close the door on religion as a whole.
Otherwise, it'll still just be a combative effort, one against the other, sort of like it is now. Each side will get stronger, but we'll still be fighting a losing battle until we have the science to back it up.
That's right. And we just don't have that right now. We can't answer those questions. We're not even kind of close in a lot of ways.